Hey guys, I wanted to hop on here and talk a little bit about weight loss and The Biggest Loser. I posted something on Instagram last night in my stories about watching The Biggest Loser, and it kind of made me sad, and I'm just not a big fan of what they're doing, and I got a lot of questions, so I wanted to come on here and do a live just because I know on Instagram the lives only last for like 24 hours, and the same thing with doing that in my stories. So I wanted to kind of come on here so you guys can watch this, hopefully learn something, and reference this if you found it useful. So to basically, before I talk about why I think The Biggest Loser is not doing great things for the contestants, is I want to go behind the biology of what happens when you actually lose weight. More happens than what you actually think, and those types of things are not being considered in those contestants. So I took some notes right here, just because I want to get through some stuff and I want to make it easy to understand and kind of follow kind of like the thought process of basically what goes into a weight loss journey and how to make sure you keep the weight off. So basically, when you lose weight, your body does not know that we live in a modern society where we can just typically walk up the street and grab something to eat and we have a refrigerator full of food. It remembers the famine. It remembers times where energy was really, really low. So your body's really good at storing energy. The best way to store energy is fat tissue. So your body's pretty good at storing it. So when you try and lose weight, thus you're trying to eat less, calories drop. So if you're starting to see your weight drop, you're eating less than your body is needing to survive. Then it's using to exercise, live, cook, laugh, dance, whatever. So you're in a calorie deficit. That is what needs to happen to lose weight. When your body senses that calorie deficit, or another way to look at it is it senses energy restriction, meaning it knows you're bringing in less food than what it needs to just sustain its current state, it wants to thwart all your efforts because it's trying to keep you alive. It doesn't care how good you look in a swimsuit. It just wants to keep you alive. So it will downregulate its metabolic processes, meaning it gets way better at doing everything it can do using less energy. So if it's getting fed less, it's like, fine, you're feeding me less, but you're doing all the same thing. So I will become way more efficient at doing everything that you do while only feeding me what you're feeding me and not losing weight. It will downregulate its metabolic processes. So that's why if like you're losing weight, it's going really well, and you don't change anything, and the weight eventually stops coming off, that's because your body's adapted so well that you're no longer even eating in a calorie deficit. You're just maintaining at that point. Thus, you would need to drop calories again to keep the weight loss happening. So your body's really good at making sure you don't lose weight because it doesn't want you to, because it's trying to protect you. So as you start to lose weight, your metabolic processes drop. The severity of the drop and the adaptation is really highly correlated with how intense the restriction was and also how long you were restricted. So the more intense and the longer you restrict, the harder your body takes that hit and tries to adapt to those low levels. Then if dropping its metabolic processes isn't enough, what happens is there's a hormone that your fat cells secrete. And I'm talking pretty much your standard individual. If you're morbidly obese, this is going to be a little bit different of a conversation, but fat cells secrete a hormone called leptin. Basically what that does, it's a signal to your body. That hormone says, I'm not hungry, I'm good, I'm fine. The larger our fat cells, the more leptin we secrete. So as we lose weight, our fat cells go from here to here, they get smaller, you're secreting less leptin. So your body doesn't have as much of the hormone that tells you I'm not hungry. So it makes you kind of feel more hungry. And then, if that's not enough, when you're losing weight, it increases its secretion of a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin makes you hungry. So now you have less of the hormone that says I'm not hungry, so you're more hungry. And then you have more hormone that says I'm hungry, so now you're just super hungry. So it's downregulated your metabolism and it's trying to make you eat more. So it is really working hard to make sure you don't lose weight. So it's a little bit more than just willpower at this point. Your biology is almost going against you at this point. So the way I kind of think about leptin is something that, like some of you guys might know, a lot of us learned this in undergrad, is that like when you're out drinking, you break the seal type of thing. What actually happens is in our bodies, we have something called ADH, an antidiuretic hormone. So alcohol shuts that off. So basically, alcohol doesn't make you pee. It just reduces the secretion of the hormone that says I don't have to pee. So it's kind of one of those inverse things where leptin doesn't make you hungry, but your body down-regulating leptin makes you hungry. So that's what happens when you lose weight. Then the third part of your body saying, all right, I don't want you to lose weight, I want you to feel hungry, is all right, So you're losing weight. I don't like it. So I'm going to make sure if you do this again, I am way better equipped. It recruits troops. So if you're dieting, calories are low, your metabolism is suppressed, and you just say, fuck it, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. You fall off the wagon, or it's at the end of your diet, so you just start eating prior levels, and you start putting weight back on, and quickly. That's because your body has also gotten way more effective at storing the energy you give it. So it's like, fine, you're finally giving me food. This is awesome. I'm going to keep it all. So it will store the energy you give it, meaning food. And how it does that is it refills those fat cells that shrank when you were dieting. So they were this big, and then you dieted, they went to this big. So it's like, let's do this. And it wants to fill them back up. Your fat cells can only get so big. So your hunger is still through the roof. Your metabolism hasn't caught up yet, but your weight's going up. So when that happens and your body's like, all right, I'm still hungry, and your metabolism hasn't caught up and you're still giving it a lot of food, it wants to store that energy. But if it ran out of room in all of its fat cells, it will make more fat cells. So that can actually happen. So if you had, I'm going to just throw out an erroneous number. Like, let's say you had like 500 fat cells in a certain area, and then you started packing on pounds quickly. By the time you stop gaining weight, and you might have gained more weight than you lost to begin with, you might have 600 fat cells in that area now. So your body has now defended itself so that when you try and lose weight again, you have to work harder because you can't get rid of those fat cells that were created. You can just shrink them. So it downregulates its metabolism. It increases and decreases hormones that all point to making you feel like you are super duper hungry. And then as soon as you start eating more, if you gain weight quickly, it makes new fat cells to be really good at storing all the energy that it wants now. So that's what's happening from a biological perspective. That is something that you need to know before you try and lose weight, because you need to have a plan to combat all of those things. More on that later, so keep watching. Let me just reference my notes here for a second, make sure I didn't get super duper sidetracked. All right, we're going into the Biggest Loser talk. So do I think the general thing, the whole concept of the show of trying to help people who have tried other diets, just kind of feel like it's their last effort and have a lot of weight to lose because their health is declining because of the weight they're carrying around? No, I think that's great. I think it is good to have a show that showcases that, yes, because you do have the extra fat tissue, you are set yourself up for certain very serious health complications, and you should try and lose the fat tissue. I think that's a very good message. How it's done, I am not a fan of. So basically, if the severity of your deficit is playing a role in your body's defense mechanism, so the harder you kind of diet, the harder your body works to make sure you don't lose weight, it kind of activates all its defense systems, the harder you're going to have to work to keep the weight off. So basically, a few things that I don't like about the show that just really bother me is they're in such a hard deficit. They're working out to the point they were throwing up. Last night, the trainer was like, I was 320 pounds. I know how it feels. And it's great when you can really relate to someone. Like, I was overweight. I've lost over 60 some pounds or so. So most of my clients like that I know how it feels. And I've done it. But also, she opened with, it started with me, like just simple walking when I was 300 some pounds. I was just walking and doing basic movements and just exercising. She was exercising these people who were 300 some pounds, some not even that heavy, to the point where they were getting sick. I'm like, you didn't do that day one. That is not necessary. I've never once gotten sick when working out, ever. That is not a necessary component of losing weight. That's a problem. So they're working out so hard in an unsustainable fashion. You cannot work out that hard for that long indefinitely. You will eventually break. And then the environment is so controlled. Who couldn't lose weight when it is your job to wake up and exercise, and they control your diet really, really specifically? Of course you're going to lose weight. It's why your dog can lose weight when you make it walk more and you can restrict its food. You don't have access to the things that were contributing to your obesity in the first place. Happy hour, pizza with your friends, late night ice cream, popcorn at the movies. You need to actually be able to implement healthy lifestyle changes while you're losing weight, so you can do them when you are done losing weight to help keep the weight off. That's kind of just a little pet peeve. And so let's go into this a little bit. So I wrote down some stats just because they've done research on these studies. And that's why you don't see a ton of before and after Biggest Loser pictures, because the afters, most of them have put a considerable amount of weight back on, and it's for all the reasons I just went over. They are a ticking time bomb for their body to want to gain weight because their body is freaking out. So, all right, what I wrote down, I'm going to just kind of look at these stats here. So they did some studies that were done on Biggest Loser contestants, and the study was done 6 years after they were on the show. And the show they were looking at was a 30-week weight loss process. So a win, the average weight reduction from when they ended the show to after they put some weight back on, they were actually still weighing about 22% less than when they started the show. So that's a win. All right, that's a good thing. But let's just say, and this is kind of like the average stats, the average individual when they started in this study was about 330 pounds. So as they were losing weight, there's calculations kind of you can do to predict how much your metabolic rate is going to drop when you're losing weight. It's going to drop more than typically the calculation says, but the calculations are fairly reasonable. The Biggest Loser contestants' training was so intense and their food intake was so low that their metabolic rate dropped 26% lower than any predicted value. Then, when they did the study 6 years later, their metabolic rate had not adjusted to the higher calories. It was still, on average, 26 to 30% less than what it should be, even though they put weight back on. So the average contestant put about 90-ish pounds back on after the show, and this was 6 years later. So they started at around 330 pounds, and then after about 6 years, the average weight was 291 pounds. So yeah, you did lose some weight. That's good for you. But because you put so much weight back on after the show and so quickly, that if you ever want to try and lose weight again from that 291 pounds, that might still be overweight for your frame, or if you are just happy as a clam, good for you, you did it. But a lot of individuals are still going to want to see fat loss after that phase. So with a tanked metabolic rate about 26% lower than what it should be, and likely more fat cells created in your body, any subsequent weight loss attempts will have to be harder and take longer than the first time. So they basically set themselves up to put weight back on, and then any future weight loss attempts might feel futile, but it's because what worked before isn't going to work anymore because your body's seen it before and it has implemented self-defense systems to make sure it is not effective when you do it again. So you have to work harder and for longer for sometimes less impressive results, because the long-term implications of losing that amount of weight that quickly were not taken into consideration. It was not about sustainability, and that's a big issue, and I'm just going off on a tangent here, is an issue with a lot of diets nowadays. It's not, is it going to help me lose weight? Yeah, it probably will. Most diets are effective in helping you lose weight because you're just controlling your intake and you're more aware of your food choices. But also, after 3 years, this is kind of a different stat, 95% of dieters have put most of the weight they lost back on, some even more. So it's not, can the diet help me lose weight? What you should be looking for, it's, can it help me lose weight and then keep it off? That's the hallmark of a good diet, because the more you up and down that yo-yo diet, you go into a calorie deficit, you come out. You go into a calorie deficit, you come out. You're up and down constantly. Those of you who cannot even remember the last time you weren't trying to lose weight, that just reinforces your body's self-defense systems that I touched on in the beginning, the down-regulating metabolism, the increase in hormones to make you hungry, the decrease in hormones that tell you you're not hungry, and the increase in fat tissue, fat cells, if you put on weight too quickly. All of that gets reinforced every time you diet. So the more you diet, the stronger that defense system gets. So those are just things you want to take into consideration instead of just trying every diet every time you see a new book at the bookstore. And really do some research and invest in a program that you feel like is going to be sustainable long term, just so you don't continue to feel like every attempt is futile, because really every attempt you do is just strengthening your body's defense systems to make sure it's harder the next time you try it. So what do? My last sheet. Oh boy, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so basically to help combat against these body's self-defense systems to not make you want to lose weight is you do need to be in a calorie deficit to see the weight come off, but you want to be in a slight calorie deficit, enough to start seeing the weight coming off, but enough where you're not a huge deficit where your body's going to start sending the alarm and bring up all of its defenses and start changing your hormone secretions very quickly. So a lot of times what we do is you're in a slight calorie deficit, or you're in a little bit like larger of a calorie deficit, but you have implemented what are called planned refeeds, where you bring calories back up to your perceived maintenance, just so your body knows more food is coming in kind of at a consistent level. It's not just, that's not the binge on the weekends. That's not where I'm going with that. It's structured and calculated per your anticipated maintenance given your exercise program. So basically you want to be in a slight calorie deficit and maybe have some planned refeeds in there. That helps prevent against metabolic downregulation as best we can right now given current. What you really, so sorry, I think I lost the connection. But finally, the biggest piece to help us try and keep the weight off that we lost is what's called the post-diet phase. What you need to do is have a diet after you diet to get you back to being a normal human. So like we said, when you diet, calories drop and your metabolism drops. So when you're done dieting, your metabolism is down here, your calories are down here, and your hunger is up here. That's when everyone just says, fuck it, and then starts eating like crazy, and then your weight starts coming back up, and then everyone's mad. We've done it. I've done it. A lot of us have done it. So even when hunger is up here, calories down here, and hunger, calories, and weight, what we want to start doing is slowly increasing calories, little by little. Not associated with a lot of weight gain if you do this strategically, which also helps prevent against your body from creating those additional fat cells, but you're slowly bringing your calories up. As that happens, your ravenous hunger starts to calm down. Yeah, the first couple weeks kind of suck because you're like, I'm at my weight, I'm done dieting, I'm over it, which is why you need to plan on when you're kind of reached where you're trying to go, you're not done. You still have some work to do before you can kind of coast. So you need to work on getting calories up as your hunger comes down. Eventually, those two are going to meet, and then we can keep increasing your calories and you not feel like you're going to eat your left arm at every moment. And we get your calories to what's considered your new perceived maintenance to set your body fat point where you want it, where you left it at the end of your diet, probably give or take like 3 to 5 pounds. That's pretty normal when you start increasing carbohydrates and just living a little bit more of a flexible lifestyle. But that's a huge piece that's missing from The Biggest Loser and a lot of diets is they never help you get out of the diet and back into real life. And that's really how you can ensure that you keep most of the weight off that you lost. And then your metabolism is restored to a higher level so that any subsequent weight loss attempts, your metabolism is regulated to a higher level. You didn't leave it in the basement after your last diet, and you didn't pack on additional fat cells after your last diet because you just fell off the wagon. So the better you can plan for how to diet strategically and how to get yourself out of it is how to best keep the weight off in a long-term fashion, and something that I just don't see The Biggest Loser show doing, and why a lot of those contestants, my heart is breaking, and I just really hope that they're going to address some of these things on the show, because the research on the contestants is not pretty. So they didn't even touch on nutrition at all in the first show they did last night. So I'll probably watch 1 or 2 more just to see if they're factoring in proper and adequate nutrition for these people's sizes. They should not be eating calories that would be appropriate for a 5'5" girl who's 160 pounds wanting to lose weight. They should be meeting their size, shape, height, age, their needs, and getting really individualized nutrition guidance and monitored. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I really hope it does. I would be pleasantly surprised, but I got a lot of messages on Instagram last night, and I just wanted to record this because I feel like it was so much easier to talk about as opposed to answering individual messages, and just wanted to give you guys a little bit of the biology behind it on why it's so hard to lose weight, and every time you try it seems to be a little bit harder. So feel free to watch this. Hopefully you found it interesting and or informative, or a little bit of both. But message me questions or just like comment questions below the video so others can see. I'll answer all of them, I promised. Hopefully you guys are all having a great day, and I'm out of here. Bye!